Welcome to the Greater Culture Podcast, where we have conversations about how to elevate the quality of life through movement, nutrition, recovery, and mindset practices. Culture Podcast. Your host, Brad Marshall here, and I'm excited because we've got a new format for today. As you can see, we've got three guests on: Allison and Dylan, some friends up in the Greensboro area. Allison has been on the podcast before. Balloons for the software. That was great. And Dylan, new to the podcast here, but we have a shared interest in sports psychology. But I'm excited to get this group together to chat about the topic of resiliency when it comes to new members, current members, all the good stuff. But before we dive into that conversation, love to just get a sense of who you are. Allison, we've met you before, but you can give us a short little overview again. And then Dylan, love to hear a little bit about you and your story as well, to know who we're chatting with for today. So Allison, why don't you kick us off, give us the nice short recap of where you're at right now.
Cool. Hi, everybody. My name is Allison Nepaulsingh. I am owner of Free to Move Bodywork and Mobility. I'm also a coach at CrossFit Versatile. That's pretty much that part.
That's the easy part. Helping people move better, whether it's CrossFit or whether it's doing the bodywork side of the house. So
all the teams.
Yeah, absolutely love it. So welcome back, Allison. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
Hey, my name's Dylan. So I'm the head coach of Iron Barbell Collective, the weightlifting team. I've done a ton of stuff, but just to kind of simplify it, I've been a personal trainer for the past, 7 or 8 years. And I only stepped into this head coaching position maybe about a year ago, just taking over that. And I've been starting to do some more like youth strength and conditioning for some younger athletes who just play, sports like soccer, football, all that stuff. I do some personal training on the side, but, my biggest thing is just coaching, working with athletes and that kind of thing. Taking them to competitions has been a big thing that we've been trying to do. I've noticed that's always been something we're lacking a little bit. So I'm trying to get to, as every single competition we can go to. But, back to the sports psych thing, that's something that I've loved doing with this is that, my background's in sports psych, but I didn't really want to pursue a, typical career in sports. Like I wanted to, cause we'll talk about it later, but one of the big issues of sports psych is convincing the coaches and the people working with the athletes to adhere to your program. Right. So when I'm the coach and I'm the person who, writes the programs and works with all the athletes, that's one of the biggest barriers in sports psych I just had to knock out. So that was one of my most exciting aspects about getting into this position was all this stuff that I've always been wanting to implement with athletes, I can now easily do with a drop of a hat. I can also encourage the people around me, the assistant coaches around me to do that as well. So that is a little bit of, my background and how I kind of look at my own position.
Yeah, I very much can relate to that. You get really excited about learning these topics and you want to share them with all these athletes. But one, you need to get access to the athletes. So the coach has to be bought in and want to bring you in. And then two, if you start to work with them, it's kind of like, is the coach going to follow up? Are they going to, take the things I'm sharing and try and hopefully implement them? But when you get to be coach, owner, leader, you get to determine how you leverage it. So it's really awesome skills that you can apply. And so how we all got together here was Allison shot me a text and she's like, hey, have you ever talked about resiliency or have you ever jumped into conversations about new athletes onboarding this and that? I said, not necessarily. And so she sort of brought this group together and said, you were having a really fun conversation with Dylan and thought, hey, why not record it and see what's going on there? So give us the sort of background context of what some of the conversation was like that you were having. And I'd love to dive into that topic too, of just how do we help athletes who are either looking for a gym or maybe first walking into a gym, acclimate and adapt? How do they continue that process? Because it can be a really challenging environment out there to get new people in the door, to get people to want to stick with whatever it is they're doing, CrossFit, weightlifting, fitness in general. So how did that conversation come up with you two about this topic?
So for the office space that I work in, I manage their social media. And one of the things that I really wanted to do for the month of June was talk about men's health, really throw in the whole round table of everything that is men's health. And Brad, I think I had talked to you very briefly at the beginning of the month about it too. But I reached out to Dylan because obviously Iron Barbell and my office are right beside each other. And so it's like, cool, I wanted him to bring in a nice aspect of what it is to be within the gym, coaching, gaining muscle as you age, etc. And then he kind of hit me with this whole, it was almost like toxic masculinity versus mental toughness sort of thing. Are they the same? What is that actually? And how he started explaining it and the research that he talked about, it was incredibly fascinating. Something I wasn't fully expecting. Then we kind of took the toxic masculinity part out of it. And I think that's where the word resilience sort of came in. But we also started talking about, anxiety around the gym, starting in the gym for the first time ever. He made the comment, everybody has a first day, right? But what is so scary about starting within the gym? And that brought up motivational factors for the gym. And we just went into this whole deep dive, but it was so cool. And how all of those things can truly just kind of come together. And I don't know, I think it was more so a thing of we wanted to break down some barriers of, what is that gym culture mentality and what it really should be. What we see on social media versus what it should be in real life, and how that's kind of, I think, evolving. I think we've kind of seen it. We talked about it a little bit, but we still know that there's some toxicity out there in the gym culture. So I think that's kind of where it started. And then we're really bad about just deep diving all the time.
Oh yeah.
I love rabbit holes and getting lost in them. And I think it is a really relevant topic because even in the CrossFit space, it's still one of the, I would say the number one barriers is people, I need to get fit to be able to go into a gym, or they see what's going on social media, whatever else, and they're intimidated. They're like, I don't even want to walk into that gym because I'm not sure I'm ready for it or I can handle it. And so even just getting over that first barrier of having that first day can be really, really tough for people.
Yeah.
This is why I love working with Allison. We have a conversation that I don't say I forget about it, but then she sums it up so much better than I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, we did talk about that. But it was super fun because one of my favorite things about this field is when I explain things, it helps me memorize them and learn them a whole lot better. But I think what I have fun with is there's so many misconceptions around that toxic masculinity resiliency space on what does it mean. Every single study I've ever read in terms of resiliency, they've interviewed all these coaches, all these people, and what they kind of find is that resiliency is just a funny term for every positive trait an athlete or a gym goer can have. They were like, it doesn't really have a solid definition. Same with toxic masculinity and anxieties. It's so elusive. It means so many things. You can narrow it down to a few things, but it's so hard to really put a pin in it. It's kind of just elusive in that sense. And so the one thing that I really like to talk about is when it comes to resiliency, how I kind of get the conversation started is a lot of people think it's, pushing through pain, all this stuff. There's all these very positive factors to it. But there's all these studies I loved reading on these. They get these narratives and find these stories they go interview these elite athletes, or they even interview not elite athletes, college level athletes, all that stuff. There's some people who express those toxic masculinity traits, and they find that they're sacrificing individuality, they're pushing through pain when they don't need to, and they don't have a great support system. This is what me and Allison talked a whole lot when we were trying to put this whole thing together. And it's kind of ironic now. We were talking about how we should, record what we're saying next time, and here we are actually recording. So that's pretty convenient. But anyway, so they interview them and they, find out all these traits. And they score very high in resilience, which there's a couple scales that they use for resilience. And then they go interview actual elite athletes, Olympic level athletes. And what they find is they score just as high on resilience scales. But they find out that, and they actually interviewed them asking about their early life, middle life, late life, when they got more elite. When they were younger, they were never pushed into being elite athletes at all. They were kind of encouraged to have fun, work with their coaches, work with their teammates. And as they got older, they found out that they didn't develop a positive and amazing coping skill. They really developed a way to talk with their, support system to get over challenges and stuff like that. So this is where we kind of started bringing that conversation to the gym, to, newer gym goers of, you don't have to, sacrifice your individuality, go fight through pain and all that stuff to go to the gym and make progress. What you really should look for is, a support system that's going to help you get there. And when you encounter challenges, whether it's intimidation, something like that, you have people to rely on and bounce ideas back off of. So that's the way I kind of like to start off the conversation with a lot with this stuff and then kind of go from there. I always think that's a fascinating finding that they had, that these people who are elite athletes, they're not constantly bashing their head into a wall trying to get better. They just have a great support system, great coaches that they can talk to and openly talk to. And they don't have to sacrifice their mental health as much. Of course, when you're training at that elite of a level, you have to sacrifice something a little bit. But we can learn a lot as we work with general gym goers and people new to the gym of this is a great way to get started, is find a support network. So that's how I like to start it off.
Yeah, I love that perspective. And I actually worked with the military for a number of years and we trained resilience. So they had 14 skills that, they outlined and we'd walk through. And a lot of it comes down to what I call like the 3 C's of resilience. Number 1 is this idea of commitment of, is there something I'm striving towards or I'm working towards that I'm passionate about or I like? Because I'm going to be resilient. I'd like to enjoy or want to strive towards something. And then the second piece here is that idea of challenge, which you highlighted, of just how do we think about those settings? Do I think of it as a threat? Walking into a gym, my ability to lift this barbell, my ability to do this workout. And if we think of it as a threat, our body responds accordingly, and usually not in a very favorable way. So it's like, can we have a more challenge or opportunity type of mindset, especially when we start facing adversity? And then the big one that I think a lot of people miss is it's not a solo adventure. This idea of connection. So challenge, you've got this commitment, but then there's connection. Like you have to have a support system, regardless of who you are, to have a sense of resiliency. It's not a one-man job or one-woman job. And I think people sometimes miss that, where they think, oh, if I'm going to go down this fitness journey or I'm going to try and get in shape for myself or whatever else, it's just me. And I think those are the people that tend to burn out pretty quickly, or they come up against some of those challenges. They come up against some of the adversity and they just throw in the towel, or it's too hard or too difficult, too complicated. And they back out.
Well, and that's one of the things I think Dylan and I kind of hit on at one point was, what are the motivational factors? And I think community was within that. But like, I think the reminder comes down to like, community looks different for everybody too. So going back to what are your goals and stuff like that, it's easy to find people who are going to match also what your goals are. So if it's like you want to become like this massive bodybuilder, like roided out if you wanted to. I'm not saying you should, but like if that's the path you want to go, you're gonna end up finding a community that's kind of with that. Or you find like I think about like the Stonewall series, the like kickball and volleyball, and that's just a whole community in itself of people just want to get out, they want to have fun, they want to meet people. That's on a completely different aspect, but it's movement, right? It's fitness to it, like an extent. Weightlifting has it, CrossFit has it. So it's just like you find people, and it doesn't look the same for everybody, but you typically find somebody who is going to, or you should try and find people who match what works for you, right? And it's okay, like you said, you don't have to be alone. Like, and that is the toxicity that kind of comes behind it, is like, no pain, no gain, hustle every day. Like, I've got this, I did this for me. Like, it's like, yeah, you want to do it for you, right? But at the same time, like, you can't do it alone. Like, there's such a difference within that, like within just that saying alone of like, I did it for me. Like, good, I'm glad that you did it for you. But to what extent are you alone all the time? Like, what is your mental health like with that now? So I don't know, like that's stuff that I kind of think about a lot. And it's like, you hear different things and it's like, how do you take it, really?
Yeah. And I'd love to get Dylan's take on this, because as we've started the gym and been building and growing over the last year and a half, like one thing that really stands out is this idea of culture. I mean, it's in our name, but what is the environment that you're creating? Because community is one thing, just getting a group of people who are doing the same workout, like you're going to instantly build community. The deeper level to that then is, what are you encouraging your athletes to do? Is it, hey, at all costs, you're trying to go RX or compete against people at all costs, we're not scaling or modifying or whatever it might be. And it's interesting because I think, personal opinion here, I think CrossFit is sort of having this identity crisis, where there was a period of time where it was Forging Elite Fitness, Pukey the Clown, we go hard, you rip your hands, like you just keep going, and that's who we are. And that's cool. Like that is a community and a style. And then now it's more shifting to like, hey, we just want to get everybody in the gym. Anybody can come. You're going to work hard, but we're not trying to like, get rhabdo and this and that. And it's really interesting because you can see like there's an old guard that has a cultural approach to it, and the new guard who's got some. And so each gym's going to have their own culture of how they interpret it, how they're encouraging folks. And that's something that's really on the top of my head of like, we want to create community, but then you also want to find the community who aligns with how you think about working out, being part of the group, being supported, being encouraged, and what that looks like. And Dylan, I know you running, the weightlifting club up there. And I imagine that's something that's on your mind too, of the way the coaches and the athletes are interacting with each other to create the environment that people can be successful.
Oh yeah, you guys gotta be careful. I'm gonna start talking way too much because like you just like you keep saying things and writing things down, and like, oh man, I could talk for hours. But I want to hit on something really quick because like all this is gonna tie around the culture that we were talking about. But both of you mentioned something about like going at it alone, and I just really kind of was thinking, I was like, we always kind of talk about you don't have to go at it alone from a coach's perspective. But I'm also thinking about it like from, being a gym goer going in on their own for the first time. Some of the things I've heard people say is like, oh, I don't want to slow other people down. Stuff like that. I've heard stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to keep up all that stuff. But, it's funny. I'm thinking about how I've had a couple people similar way, but what happens when they actually get to the gym is the exact opposite. Like I've had a couple people who come in and I like to really like work with everyone's goals. So like if someone comes in, they want to do Olympic weightlifting, but they're like, man, I also want to get jacked and shredded. I'm like, cool, I'll throw some bodybuilding in there for you. And they're brand new and they're doing it on their own because they don't want to slow people down. And then like my more adept level lifters will go over like, hey, come bodybuild with me. And they're like, what? Aren't I going to slow you down? They're like, no, you're going to speed me up because I want to keep going. I want to have somebody to work with. And then they start learning off of each other. And that's what I love about the culture that like I wish some people kind of knew about, that when you get in, you think you're going to be pushed away because you're kind of newer, but you actually, that's how you kind of get pulled in a little bit more. And kind of mention goals a little bit and kind of like shaping that culture a little bit. And this is something I started doing the other day, actually just with a conversation with a new athlete. So one thing I was deciding that I really like to have, in terms of goals. So this athlete was telling me about more materialistic goals. I was even talking about more materialistic goals the other day with myself. And one thing that I think everybody should have, either you have a coach do this for you or somebody else do this for you. If your goals are either materialistic or intangible, like for me, one of my goals is I chase a feeling with weightlifting. I love the adrenaline of like having all these people watch me at competitions or whatever it is. And I love lifting with all eyes on me. I go for that feeling. And I always try to have another goal that is a little bit more materialistic to go for, but with the other side of people, some people come to me with a materialistic goal. Hey, I want to medal at this event. And now me as a coach, what I like to try to do is balance them out a little bit. I'm like, okay, that's great for the long term. What are we going to do? What kind of feeling are we going to chase? Do you want to chase a feeling of, going to the gym, having a fun time? Do you want to, just feel good lifting? Do you want to have the adrenaline rush that, I go for because I'm a junkie that way? what do you want out of that? Like, they're like, oh, I want a medal. Like, no, let's take a step back. I want something else with you as well. I want you some sort of mental goal that you can have that you can chase every single day. I'm a really big fan of the process, like loving the process. I have so many people that come in, I want to lose weight. I've had this so many times before. I want to lose weight. I want to get stronger. And I was like, hey, I'll tell you what, that's the quickest way to like see slow progress, because you're going to always check the scale. Be like, oh, I lost 0.1 pounds in 2 months.
Mm.
Anyways, so like it just keeps it so slow. But if you're like, man, I had so much fun learning how to snatch today, I can't wait to do that every week. And then you come in every week and you learn how to snatch, and then you forget about the scale for a while and you've already lost a few pounds. That's what I try to get people to do, is fall in love with something else. But to that gym culture that we kind of talked about, I like to really facilitate a fun gym culture. Because my biggest philosophy, and I'm sure both of you could speak on this, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you do this, because I have my own ways, but I like to hear how other people do this, is how do you make it fun for people so they want to keep coming back? That is like my biggest thing. So, Allison, you've seen me and Halana probably get into like, I don't know, arguments all the time, my assistant coach, all the time about stupid stuff. And we're like a TV show. Like, people are just watching us cracking up, saying the dumbest things. We like argue with each other jokingly, but I think that's what makes it really fun. People are like, oh, they're having fun. I'm just sitting here in a chair lifting. Maybe I should try to have fun.
Mm.
So I try to lead by example in that way, but I love to hear how, if any ways, you guys make it fun. 'Cause I think that also, believe it or not, contributes to resiliency. When you can have fun with the people you're around, you're more comfortable with approaching them with questions. Just trying to keep it on track a little bit.
Well, I feel like if you don't mind me jumping in really quick, Brad, I think knowing both of you and who you guys are, I feel as if you guys just build a safe environment, right? You build an environment where it is safe to have fun, where it is safe to be open, be silly, making fitness fun. It's not serious all the time, and it really shouldn't be. Like you said, you got to fall in love with that process, and it's sometimes it's just being stupid and silly, and then all of a sudden turn it off and you're snatching like whatever it is, like a big ass weight. So I think it is coming from the coaches, from what people view you as, is just you've harbored a very like safe environment for them to just come in and be like, oh, okay, this is fine. Because knowing everybody who is at that weightlifting gym is, I love every single one. They're such good-hearted people, and it's a different culture than CrossFit is, but it's still such a tight-packed like community, and I love to see it. And everybody, like you said, has different goals within it, and everybody is there like, oh my god, you did it. Like, and you can go and look at when people post on their social media something that they're proud of or whatever. The entire like weightlifting side is on there, just like, you did that. Where's the weight at? Because you just killed that. Like, stuff like that. And it's just like all the inside jokes that happen over there. It's so cool to see. But I think you guys have really, really just harnessed that safety within it. And like for me, I'm dancing. You will always know me as the coach that is dancing. Brad's like, yes. You'll always know me as that. And that's just it, because and even when I'm working out myself and when I'm lifting, I remember being told years ago, and to me, that was like I hated this mentality, and it made me feel bad about myself for a long time. And then I was just like, I don't give a fuck anymore. But it was in between like reps or something, when I'm just tired, I'm redlining a little bit, you'll just catch me just vibing. I'm just dancing in the middle of it, and I get yelled at like, if you'd stop dancing, you could do better. You could get more rounds. You could do this. I'm like, nah, y'all, I'm vibing. I was like, this makes me feel good. This brings me down. This regulates me. This is what it is. Even for my lifts, like I'm doing something heavy, and I think Dylan has seen I've sent him some of my lifting videos, and I'm just like cha-cha sliding like really quick, and then I go and hit like a 135 jerk or something like that. Like, it's just dumb. But like I can turn it off really quick. But it makes me feel good. It regulates.
You know what, Allison? I love that you mentioned that because I literally like just last week, I am like 100% exactly that way. I found out when I'm locked in and serious about lifting, I have the worst lifts. When I am having fun and I'm dancing, I'm so loose and I'm fluid and I lift so much better when I'm not thinking as intensely. Like, I was like, I was dancing around one day and I was lifting. I was like, man, this is great. And I'm like, what? Am I this way? So, yeah, I found that out literally last week.
I love that for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you said there that resonated with me was this idea of creating a space where people can be themselves. And I feel like I've kind of like wavered side to side where it's like there's times where you try and infuse some fun. So maybe you're doing like a warm-up game where you're trying to get people to just do something a little bit different. And then there's the times where you're like, okay, we've got X amount of programming, so I want to keep us on track. And some people don't like games. So then it's this idea of like, can you create an environment where it's like it's a little bit more laid back? Like, I'm going to coach you, I'm going to try and help you get better, but we're going to sing along to the music. I'm going to ask you how things are going. We're going to get excited when you, like Dylan said, see progress or move forward, because I think fun looks different for everybody. Like sometimes it's the coach who's bringing it, sometimes it's the athletes who are bringing it, sometimes it's just the progress of like, oh, I wasn't able to do that. Now I can do that. And like, this is super fun. I'm learning new skills and I'm learning new movements. And it looks so different for everyone. I think that's why it's hard to capture it. But I think what you said, and it's something that's resonated with me. I read it a long time ago from James Clear, an author, where he just said, he who has the most fun wins. And you're like, if you're asking me, would you rather have an environment where people are having fun, or not that they're exclusive, but like super technical, perfect movement, like getting coached up from 0 to 60, I'd probably waver towards fun, because those are the people who are going to keep coming back. And somebody who's like, yeah, the coach is great, like cued my movements, kept me on track, but like, it wasn't as enjoyable, they're probably not going to come back or stick with it. So I think that speaks to that resiliency of when you're looking for this community and this culture. Is it a culture that, one, you're enjoying, you're having fun with, it fits the vibe you're looking for, it allows you to be yourself, and then there is that focus on the progress of just like getting excited and fired up and pumped up when they're making these small incremental jumps. And I think that's something that is tough, because we see the big lifts, you see the big PRs, you see the muscle ups, and you got somebody who gets their first double under and they're like, well, that person over there, they can do 50, they can do 100, like that's my first one. And you're like, that was your first one? Like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And like, you have to pump them up to like get them excited, because otherwise they just crap on themselves all the time. Everybody kind of like downplays their achievements and what they're doing, which I think also kind of leads to some of that resiliency as well, of like, if I'm always talking down to myself, it's hard to like want to keep showing up and put myself out there, look like a fool, trying to learn the snatch and learn how to do pull-ups and learn how to do all these things. Like, they're hard movements. And if people aren't in an environment that allows them to fail and figure it out, then it's going to be really hard for them to want to keep showing up as well.
Well, yeah. And like, I think we kind of talked on that last, like when I was on with you last, Brad. It was just it's the little things, always coming back to the little things and just saying, yeah, somebody came in and just like, they already came in mentally not in a great place. Maybe they had a hard day at work, whatever it was. They're coming to their safe space, right? They're coming to their space where they know that they can have fun, but they're still having a hard time like getting into it. And then they see movements that they don't like, and they're just like, this is going to go so bad. Like, I can't do any of it. And I think when you get to know your people, and I think that is the nice thing about, being within the gym that we're all in. I think we know majority of our people who walk through that door on a daily basis. We know what their fitness looks like. We know their capabilities, all this stuff. And you can just walk up to them and just kind of be like, I feel like you're not 100% today. What's going to make you feel good? What can we do? Do you just need to move? What do we need to back off for you today? Or what do we need to change? Like, whatever, because I'm just happy that you came here to move. Thank you so much for just showing up, because that was probably the hardest part today. So thanks for doing it. What can we do to make this experience better? And sometimes it's just hearing those words of, hey, like, I'm glad that you're here. thank you for doing that. Sometimes that's enough of a boost, right? But other times it's just like, I don't know, it's just being seen. You're made to feel safe, you're made to feel good. And it's just like, yeah, I kind of need to not do what's programmed today. Can I just bike instead? I just kind of want to be around people though. And do you know how many of the people in our, like, who are so used to seeing those people in class will go up to them and be like, hey, just want to make sure that you're okay. You did awesome today. You know, like they'll still show up and say, I saw that you did the bike for 30 minutes and said, how are you feeling? That must have been hot or something like that. Like everybody's always got something super positive to say. But I think that starts with like us as the coaches and the owners and like stuff like that of setting that example. So Dylan, I think you said that earlier of modeling those behaviors. And it's crazy how I see it with my toddler. Like she's 4 and I see her modeling that stuff even within the gym. And this girl hit me. I was trying to work on double unders one night, not doing great. And she hit me with I was frustrated and she goes, Mommy, take a breath. It's going to be okay. Try one more time. And like that moment just made me like stop. I laughed because I'm like, she was 3 at the time. I'm like, my 3-year-old is coaching me right now, but she has seen it. And then I did, and I still didn't do great at them. I only got like a couple strung together, and she was, you did it! I'm so happy for you. Like just so excited. But it cracks me up because like I saw myself in her in that moment because it's like, because that I've done that with people coaching. Like I'm just like, I'm so happy for you. Look at that. Like you said, you got that double under. Holy crap, that was your first one. Awesome job. Like, you know, stuff like that. And so it was, I don't know. It's just funny how important modeling is in building that culture within a gym. So it's really neat.
Yeah. Talking to somebody as they come in, noticing something is like, I do that on a daily basis. I'm actually very known for, so like, it's funny. So many coaches in the world of weightlifting are very strict on their programming. Oh, I could not be the opposite. I'm so flexible with my programming. I love to change it up a little bit every day because when I do programming, I tell people this is what it looks like if we have a perfect month. And odds are we all have lives and stuff like that. We don't have perfect months. It doesn't happen. I have so many instances every single week where somebody comes in and, they're supposed to do something, whatever it is. And it's just for whatever reason, not working all that well. I'm like, I almost say the exact same thing Allison says. What would make you feel better? And I'm like, let's talk through that. And like, I think that's such an important part of resilience when it's almost like you versus the athlete. You're never going to build resilience. It has to be you and the athlete versus the goal. And when you have that conversation and you talk with them, hey, let's talk about what we can do. So, you're missing your split jerks at 90%, whatever it is. Let's wave down a little bit, wave down to 70, work our way up back to maybe 85. Let's just go for like a really good looking split jerk at a lower percentage, see how that feels. They get that. And they can walk out of the gym feeling like they accomplished something rather than if you just told them, hey, let's push through the program, no changes at all. Yeah, it's hard to really like get them to build some sort of confidence and resilience. And, from all of my studies and things I went through, like I did all of my thesis on anxiety and stuff like that. Building confidence is the best and quickest way to create resilience and create a stronger athlete mentally and physically. When you can give them things to make them feel confident and competent, you are going to create much better athletes in a gym atmosphere. That's just how I do it.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And the one thing I feel like I've been focusing on a lot more, and we've seen more of it in our space, is working on the mindset of the folks who are walking in the gym. And the simplest way that I like to define that is just, what are people saying to themselves? And you can start to hear it if you know what to listen for. You can see it in the athletes as well. But confidence is, how are we talking to ourselves? Am I talking to myself in a way that's encouraging, it's uplifting, I'm pulling from previous experiences that are allowing me now to have some belief that I can do this? But how many times do we walk in front, talk to a group about a workout, like, this is going to suck. I'm terrible at this. I don't like this. And we have those initial thoughts. And resiliency does come back to this idea of, I can notice those thoughts, but then I can either reframe, change, or I talk to myself in a way that allows me to be successful, building confidence, things like that. And so I'd be curious if you all have listened to or find ways to do that. People now are not shy about when they say that, say, hey, we don't say that here, or that language is not allowed here, and even if it's just those little, just not even thinking about it, but it just leaves your mouth, you're like, the way you're talking to yourself is going to directly impact your experience here today, the way you continue to think about challenging situations moving forward. So just trying to get people to be a little nicer to themselves. It's a hard skill, but that's a huge part of resilience.
I hit people with threats of I'm gonna pins if you keep talking to yourself. Or I'm gonna take your knees out if you say that one more time. It kind of works. It makes it a little funny at least, but I'm also like half serious. Like I'll have the PVC pipe in hand. I'm like, say it one more time. Say it. So that's the way I go about it. Threatening.
That's a very safe space for that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of lucky in that a little bit. Maybe it's just because how I've, facilitated things, but I don't think I've really ever have people, very rarely are they like, man, this is gonna suck. Or anything like that. I don't know, I can't maybe put an exact idea why, but one thing that I really try to do with everybody is I have this idea that when I make you a program or something like that, I'd never make it to where you are going to lose. You are always going to be successful if you kind of put some effort into it. And I just have I've created an environment, or these athletes are just that way, where they always look at, hard sets and stuff like that as a challenge. And also one thing I really try to get people to do, I explained it to somebody a while ago, and I've had a couple people make like full 180 transformations. Some people have had they were working with me for a while, and some technical stuff was off, and they were having bad week after bad week after bad week. They were missing everything. They were like getting really upset. You could tell like their head was down, all this stuff. And I tell people this, the maturity of an athlete, I can tell, is when you can have a terrible day and still find something positive about it. I don't tell people this, but I've had more bad days in weightlifting than most people. But one thing I'm so good at is I can miss all my lifts in a day and be like, I did that one thing really well, and now I'm looking incredibly forward to the next session. So I instill that kind of idea with a lot of people of, even if you have a terrible day, you miss everything, I still want us to find something to look forward to keep us going. And I remember I would tell people stay positive, and a lot of people, it just sounds like, oh, what does that even mean? Just stay positive just to get someone to feel better. And I say, no, that's the only way to keep yourself sane in this sport and like in CrossFit and all this stuff. If you can't find an excuse to stay positive, oh, you're going to burn out so fast. So I'm really good at being the opposite of essentially anything our athletes do. So if they're having an absolute terrible day, I'm like, I can find so many things that you did incredibly well at today. You kept your back foot down. You were patient in your extension. You brought that bar into the body, whatever it might be. And then they're like, I guess. And then even the opposite, I can kind of humble some people and still look forward to, getting better. Some people might have an amazing day. They hit tons of PRs. I'm like, yeah, that's absolutely great. Now here's the one thing we can still work on moving forward. So I try to create this very forward thinking mindset with a lot of people of, today doesn't matter anymore. We learned what happened. We had a great day. Let's ride that high, but let's keep on moving forward and looking forward. That's where that kind of resilience piece comes in for a lot of people I work with.
Yeah, and I like that you said that for some folks, you have to very subtly guide them to understand the skills behind building optimism or building a mindset that says, hey, I can make a positive impact or change on my futures. You have to catch those little nuances and then be like, hey, how do we build the skill? Well, we find one good thing that happened today. And then, okay, what's one thing maybe we're even grateful for that you got a chance to come in and do? And so as a coach, you really get this powerful opportunity to start to drop those seeds in. And then over time, you start to notice it, like, oh yeah, they really do look at this programming as a challenge or as an opportunity. And it's funny enough that I feel like some of our members are in that regard of like, oh, this is just another opportunity, right, Brad? I'm like, exactly. This is an opportunity to see if you can do X amount of reps unbroken, or this nasty 20-minute workout and see what you've got, and just having that little shift in mindset will surprise people at how much their body responds. We mentioned that idea of challenge versus threat and how your body responds accordingly. It's always fascinating because it's almost like you can see it in people when like, oh, this is now a threat state, and their body just constricts and they're just like, this is terrible, versus the folks who are loose and free and having fun and like enjoying it. You're like, man, it's a really hard workout, but they still look like they're figuring it out and they're just like moving through it or lifting the weight a certain way. So I think it's really cool when you start to see those mental shifts and then how it shows up in the way they train or the way they perform or whatever that looks like.
I liked what you kind of like, what you just said about how they were like, oh, this is an opportunity, right? Like, it's almost like you've gotten in their head now of things that you say to switch that mindset. And it's almost like they're making fun of you for being the one that says it, but it's like, but you're hearing it in your brain on it daily, aren't you? Like, and I love that because it's like, cool. I'd rather be known as the coach who is like in your head all the time. You hear my voice or something from something that I said, because now guess what? You're focusing on that. This was your opportunity to do this. This was, whatever that might be. And it's just like, mind fucked. Gotcha. Like, and I think I love that the most, because that really is kind of like what it kind of comes down to, is getting in their head. But you were kind of the reason for that positive shift to start happening slowly but surely. And then it's just kind of like, how does that shift into their everyday now? What does that look like in their everyday, and how even at work, in their home life, is that helping too? So it's kind of a cool concept.
Yeah, that idea of language, there was a time period I was like, we have so many thoughts a day. Does it really matter? This and that. And then you start to realize like, yeah, the language that you use can matter for certain things. Just like simple shifts of like moving from like, I have to I get to, or this idea of like, stop shoulding on yourself. Cause like we have that all day of like, I should do this. I need to do this. I should do that. And it's like, the more we just build that up, the more anxiety we build into our life. And it's harder to want to keep going. When we come back to this idea of resiliency, because of the way we're talking to ourselves and either not staying committed, not wanting to keep going for the challenge or whatever that is. So the language can be really, really small, nuanced, but can make a huge impact for people.
Yeah. There was like one part that I wanted to hit on. Dylan and I kind of talked about, kind of going back to like new members starting, and whether this is like CrossFit, weightlifting. I mean, we see this a lot within CrossFit and weightlifting, but just going into a new realm of fitness in general. Dylan and I had kind of talked about what are the motivational factors, and I think we've kind of hit on a couple of those. But I think going back to competency within this, and I think Dylan, one of the ones that you had said initially was like autonomy, in regards to all like that being a motivational factor. But just kind of talking about competency around the gym, like just walking into a gym and being terrified of like, I don't know what I am doing. I don't know what those words mean. I don't know how you're supposed to do this movement. Am I doing it right? Like all of that stuff. And so I'm curious to know for you guys. So I know that we hear with weightlifting and CrossFit of like, oh, I'm not fit enough to do that yet, right? Okay. So say we're walking into just like a Globo type gym. What are your guys' thoughts? And I don't know how to phrase it exactly, but to be motivated to go in, to build that competency, to build that confidence of just walking into that gym and staring at everything like, how am I supposed to do this? Like, what do you feel is helpful? What do you guys think is a great way to start? I don't know.
Oh yeah. I mean, Brad, I'd be curious to hear what you kind of follow, but I am a huge self-determination theory guy. Oh man, I will follow that until I die at this point. And so for those who don't know what that is, it's a very simple, there's three aspects, main aspects to it, which is the two things that Allison already mentioned: competency, autonomy, having the ability to choose what you get to do, and then relationships. I try to foster those the best I can. So I think a lot of people really miss a lot of these, which is a lot of opportunity to keep people motivated. So when people come in, I'm not the kind of coach that withholds information. I tell everybody, I'm going to give you my entire playbook. Like, you are going to know how to almost coach yourself at a certain point. Obviously not now, but you're going to be able to look at your own videos, watch yourself, even watch other people, and understand, oh, wow, this person's doing this. I do it this way. This is the correct way, all that stuff. That competency piece is so helpful. And I tell people when they come in, you're not going to ever go to the gym blind anymore. You are going to know what you're going to do. And then on top of that, you're also going to get to pick a little bit what you get to do, right? I have all these people, I've changed up what with the athletes that I take in. So, when I first started, obviously it was like mostly we were just doing Olympic weightlifting. I have really expanded that because I want to take a big group of people. I have a couple people who are more considered elite. Like, I went to national championships last week with a guy, and I have some people who want to come in. They just want to, do some basic strength training. Like, they don't really have an interest in ever competing or ever really doing much, but they just want to lift weights. But I really will treat them the same way. And also, they all get along together really well, but they get to choose what they want to do. So the guy who's more elite, I guess you can call him, he wants to do the hard stuff. He wants to get ready for big competitions. And these other people, they want to do just some basic strength change stuff. They get to choose what they want to do, and I'm kind of the facilitator for that. And so by following that, giving them that autonomy to choose what they kind of do a little bit, it makes it coming into the gym so much more fun for them, because they're like, I chose to do that, and now I get to do what I want because it's part of my goals. That's like the part of the goal setting process is, let's find out what you want to do and we'll work on that together. And that last piece, the relationship piece, I mean, that's something we've all hit on already. I think most people are pretty good about that. But, when I have a new person, I go out of my way all the time just to go sit with them for a little, even if we don't talk about anything, just like knowing that I'm right next to them, even if I don't have anything to talk about, I think gives them some comfort on being at the gym, almost like they have like my wing around them. I've had so many people, I tell people this all the time, my favorite people to work with are the anxious and nervous ones. Because it's like, I love to see the glow up and the change. And just putting my arm around them and being like, let me show you how enjoyable this can be. That's my favorite thing, is just bringing people into the world and the sport that I love doing and showing them how rewarding it can be, how much fun it can be, and all that stuff. I've loved seeing these people like, I've had so many bad gym experiences in the past, and it just sucks every time I go in there. I worked with some people, they went way too heavy with me, and like, I was so uncomfortable. I hated it. I'm like, let me show you how fun it can be if you are with somebody who has done this a few times. So I love those nervous people, the anxious people, because, that's kind of like where my head's at. Like, I did my thesis on anxiety. I love anxiety. So I love working with those people who are there so that I can, help them, show them how much fun this can be. But that's like, I'm a big self-determination theory guy.
Yeah, I would say I 100% agree that I love self-determination and this idea of intrinsic motivation, because it's a much more sustainable form of motivation. What we mean by that is just we're chasing things that sort of are innate or come from within, whether it's the feeling I get from lifting, whether it's the feeling I get of accomplishment, of just like staying with the process, versus some of the external ones. Something that I feel like I've been focusing on is, and I've heard this from a couple folks, of just identifying or figuring out the feeling that somebody is chasing or that they are working towards. What I mean by that is, a lot of times when we work with folks, they give us this surface level goal. I want to lose weight. I want to improve this. I want to lift a certain thing. And while that's the way they've sort of phrased it, or the way they can explain it, there's something underneath that that's driving it. And it could be, I tried to get down on the floor with my kids and play, and I got exhausted and I can't do it. Somebody asked me to go on a backpacking trip or a hiking trip, and I wasn't able to. I saw a photo of myself from 5 years ago, and I was like, who is this person I've become? I tried on an outfit that years ago fit, and it doesn't anymore. So there's some of them, it's like a moment, and others, it's just this feeling that they're like, I want to feel strong again. I want to feel like I can play with my kids. I want to feel like I can go for a hike. I want to feel like the person who can fit into this type of clothing, whatever it might be. And if you can find those things, it is going to be so much more powerful in the way you connect with them and say, hey, this is why we're doing this. Because going to the gym 3 to 5 times a week, it can be really hard to see the end result that you're striving for, because we want to build lifestyles. We want to build habits that are sustainable, that they're going to just stick with. We might get to that feeling. We might get to that aesthetic you're searching for, but it's going to take time, but we need commitment. So to me, it's like finding those feelings of what they're searching for and then connecting things back to it. Like, hey, we're doing this thing over here. Because remember, you said you really wanted to feel strong. You wanted to be able to go on that hike. You wanted to play with your kids. We're building that capacity because you're doing this thing right now. And there's sort of this like, it's going to pay off. It's going to show up down the road. So for me, like walking into a gym, there's probably something underneath the surface as to why they reached out to that gym, reached out to the barbell club, walked into the Globo gym. And then if they can tie what they're doing there with that feeling they're striving towards, it'll maybe help them be a little bit more intrinsically motivated to like stay the course versus throw the towel in and be done with it. And then the final piece for me is this idea of trust. Whether they found a program online from a fitness influencer or online, there's somebody that they have even some level of trust of, or walking into a CrossFit gym or weightlifting gym, that coach has to demonstrate a certain level of competence as a leader to say, hey, I've got you. Like, you might not understand a single word that's on this whiteboard, but put your trust in me for this next hour and I will help you get there. And so there has to be that level, I think, as well, of finding a coach or coaches that you can have trust with, that in the beginning phases, like they're going to have to do some more heavy lifting to kind of get you building your confidence. And then sooner or later, be like, oh yeah, I remember last time we did that movement, or I remember when I did this. And now I'm getting excited because I kind of have an idea of where I'm going or what I'm doing. So those are things that kind of jump around in my head of figuring out, building the culture, figuring out what drives people or what the feeling is they're chasing. And then knowing like you're probably gonna have to be more heavy handed with some new folks, because you have to build some of that trust before they start to be able to have maybe more autonomy on how they want their fitness journey to look.
And I think about that too. Like, CrossFit and weightlifting are so different in the fact that that community that you see is the community that's always there, right? Like they are the people who are consistently there every day. But like you walk into a Globo gym and that's completely different. Like you always feel like it's one of those things of all eyes are on you. And like you don't like that feeling because you're just starting out. And so it's like, what are the things that are going to make that step a little bit easier? And kind of to what you just said, I think of one of the number one things is finding like a program that you trust, because I'll tell you what, after being years in CrossFit, like I think this is year 12 for me, years of being into it, I stepped back quite a bit. I didn't want to be within the CrossFit gym as much because it got to a point where my brain couldn't handle being around the people that I knew so well, because I wasn't in a place that I could talk. I wasn't in a place to hear, hey, how are you? And then not be able to get any part of my workout done. I just needed to be able to go shut off. And I've had a Planet Fitness membership forever. And I remember walking in there and being like, what do I do? I don't even know how any of this works. And which is so stupid. Like, it's so stupid because I do. I was just terrified because it was a new environment and I didn't know anybody. So while I was trying to get away from people that I knew, walking into a place where I knew nobody and I had to do it by myself, like, was slightly terrifying. So one of the things that made it easier for me was getting programming. I took one thing out of my brain that I didn't have to think about anymore. And finding one where, like, personally, I think I've loved Brooke Ence's the best. Like, surprisingly, that has such just a great format overall. And it has helped just so much. And sometimes, and now I've gotten to a piece of like feeling more comfortable of like, okay, I'm going to fuse these 2 days together because this was an upper body, this was lower body. I'm going to fuse it all together because I'm not really going to be able to work out 5 times this week. I'm going to have 2 days this week where I can strength train, and that's it. And so it's one of those pieces that just helps ease my mind and lets me go in there. Videos are with everything. And that I think is the nice thing about so much now. You have so much access to watching videos and seeing how movements are done and stuff like that. And I think that takes away a lot of that anxiety and allows it. And then over time, you know, you might end up seeing people there and just being like, hey, you regularly come at this time too. Like, do you ever like want to work out together? But it's getting those factors first of like feeling good about stepping in and doing something by yourself at first. And then slowly but surely you get to build that community. And it's kind of different, like I said, CrossFit versus CrossFit and weightlifting, because like you said, the coaches are the ones that are kind of like, sup, bud, we're gonna be besties. we got this together, and then other people will follow suit, kind of thing. It's different, it's scarier in like a Globo style setting, but I think it almost starts first with feeling good, like just having that confidence of just stepping in and just like, all right, this is where I'm going to start today. Maybe it's just on the treadmill for 30 minutes. Cool. Good job. You showed up. That's awesome. That's a start. So I don't know. That's kind of what I think about a lot of it's a scary thing, but how do you make it easier for people, and how can you almost give like validation or have people give themselves permission to say, okay, they said this, okay, I can do this too, sort of thing. So
yeah,
there's a lot around.
Oh, go ahead, Brad.
Oh, I was gonna say there's a lot around marketing and things like that too that I've picked up of just like, how can we share more stories, show more photos, have more visuals of like, that looks like somebody who's similar, or I can relate to that person, you know. And that's, I think, another aspect of CrossFit is, you know, if you're constantly showing the highest skill and the highest weight movers and things like that, that can be very intimidating for folks of like, ooh, like that's what they do at that gym. Like, I'm not sure I'm ever going to get there. And you might not ever get there, but that doesn't mean there's other folks who aren't there who are maybe more like what you want to be or what you can do. So I think that's fascinating too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you just kind of reminded me of like when a lot of probably the first thing I ever learned about anxiety that kind of started getting me interested. And this kind of ties into like how to be more resilient, also reducing some anxiety. I don't like to say reducing anxiety because, you know, everyone has kind of like a trait anxiety that doesn't really change a whole lot, but changes place to place you go. That one thing was, anxiety is kind of like a screensaver that's always going to say the worst things possible about yourself. And one thing that I've had a lot of success with not only myself, but with the athletes that I work with is, so that screensaver is always going to be there. And the background of anxiety from what I studied was, anxiety really spikes up when we're uncertain about certain outcomes. When we don't know what the outcome is going to be, anxiety goes through the roof. That's just how it happens. But the thing is, anxiety will not discriminate based on if you're in a gym or you're getting chased by bear. It's just the same thing that happens. So it's really about not as much really trying to fight against anxiety, but kind of going with it a little bit. That's how I've always looked at it. The model that I follow for anxiety, there's tons of models you can follow. There's that inverted U, you know, it's good until it gets bad kind of thing. There's all these different models and stuff. The model of control is something that I've followed. Essentially, like, you know, if you feel like you have control over a certain outcome, you won't experience as much anxiety. If you do feel a lot of control over an outcome, or the other way around, you won't feel as much anxiety. And so one thing that I try to really encourage people to do is don't focus as much on, you know, the things that might happen to you that are negative. Find reasons to be excited, even if it's one reason. You go to the gym, you know, you might find the reason of like, oh man, you got that in for the day. Now, you know, you're done, blah, blah, blah. Or it's like, you know, you're on your way to being that much stronger, whatever it might be. But that's been my biggest tip for a lot of people is find reasons to be excited, even if they're not even that real of reasons. It's just a good start. That way you're going to, because like if you're a person that always finds all the bad in every situation, you now find one good, then you find two things good. And then eventually now you only find the good out of the situations of when you go to the gym, you're like, because that's why I have a lot of people who don't have great days, but at least they show up. And I'm like, hey, look what you did, though. You like made yourself that much better. You can't get better if you don't show up. But that is like my biggest tip with a lot of people is really finding the excitement in things you can go do. So if you're going to the gym by yourself, find something exciting about it.
And I think, Dylan, I feel like I can speak on your side and like Halana a little bit of, there's one person I think of specifically at the gym for you guys. And seeing who she was 6-7 months ago when she was going to the gym, she was just not at her best. It was just mentally always hard. You could even see it in her posts sometimes if she posts on her story. It wasn't always the best self-talk, but like now when she goes in there, I feel like it's just different. Like I feel like her self-talk is a little bit more positive when she writes on her stories now. There's just a like inkling more of positivity.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like you and Alana have made her find a joy in something. And granted, I know that there's also like external factors, but I think she has such a safe place going there. And when she shows up, she feels better. She talks better about it, which that's been a really cool progression to see with her and knowing how you two are such a big part of that, which is really cool. So I love to see that.
Yeah, I think it really speaks to this idea of whether you want to call it stacking bricks or just, day by day, the more you do the actions that prove the type of person you want to be, you start to believe it more. That's where the confidence comes from. If our fastest way, if you want to call it that, to building confidence is to do the work, to get experience with the thing. So if it is when I first start off, I don't have a lot of confidence, I'm not speaking very well to myself. Well, after the first week, it's like, all right, you've proven you can do this for a week. You've proven that you can do certain things. After a month, 2 months, all of a sudden 6 months down the road, you've stacked a whole lot of bricks and you've had a whole lot of experiences that tell you you deserve the right to be maybe a little bit more positive and things like that. It's amazing how that shows through and helps build some of that resilience. And I think that's why we focus so much on consistency of showing up and walking through the door. Like you've already won just by doing that. And then everything on top of that is just really an additional bonus, additional opportunities to have more confident self-talk, to have more optimism, to have more of the what do I have control over, the way I show up, my attitude, my effort, etc. And the more we focus on those things, the more we fall in love with the process and we get really excited about where we're going. So as we're wrapping this up, any sort of final thoughts from you on this perspective of resilience and walking into a gym and how we as coaches can help influence that, but as athletes there's some level of autonomy on their end of they've got to have some control over it too.
My biggest thing is obviously communication, and that's on both sides of it, right? Like coach, you have to communicate to your athlete and say, ooh, okay, we might need to back off, or holy, always finding something. And it's either it's constructive, like whatever, like you said earlier, like it's humbling or however you want to look at it. But always having like some positive spin on it. And ultimately too, I think with that, if you want to talk physically with all of this, the risk for injury goes down so much more when you can have people having that autonomy and saying, you know what, I cannot push through my like 90% jerks today. Like there's no way, like my body is not feeling good. And if you have that safety and you have that ability to speak with your coach and your coach is able to sit back there and say, yeah, okay, cool. Let's dial that back. What do we think is going to be best today? There's going to be so much more room for growth and not as much for stepping back because we've injured ourselves because we thought no pain, no gain, baby. Like, stuff like that. So, it's really cool. So it's just having that open communication and us as coaches always giving them opportunities to learn. And asking them, hey, what do you think? what do you feel? What's going through your head today? So I think it just honestly comes down to open communication, because the more that a person can feel safe, the less their anxiety is going to be. They're going to feel better within the gym. They're going to feel better talking to whoever else is around them. So I think that's what we have to offer as coaches, but also what athletes kind of need to bring to the table as well.
Yeah, and the only thing on top of that is like very similar thing is just creating a facilitating environment for everyone. I mean, that includes communication to the best extent possible, but if you can make a facilitating environment where, as you know, kind of similar to Al said, everyone feels comfortable, everyone wants to be there and grow. Like, the environment I try to create is essentially like a club. That's why I kind of call it a club. I want people to come visit us when they're not lifting, say hi, to hang out. I want people to just hang out after sessions and just, you know, talk with everybody. I just want it to be a fun club where people come to hang out, but also lift and be healthy. So that's like my biggest takeaway. And like, it's very simple, but that's what I try to do, is just make it feel like a club.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that speaks to a lot of the conversations we've had around finding the right environment for you. You're going to build community just by walking in a door, regardless of where you go, because as soon as you start doing something difficult with a group of people, you're naturally going to be bonded. The next level to that then is figuring out, are the values, the mission, the vibe of this particular community in alignment with what I'm looking for and what I want. And if I'm looking for the club where I feel supported and encouraged and I can be myself and I can try things and fail and bounce back, then yeah, I'm definitely going to go to Iron Barbell or whatever gym that might be. So I think for all of us, it really comes down to finding the right environment, finding the community, and then being in a place that allows us to have fun and try and figure out ways that we can just get a little bit better each day. So with that, Allison and Dylan, this was super fun. Really grateful that we got a chance to connect. I have a feeling that we're going to do maybe some more of these in the future, because I think this would be fun to find some topics to riff on and have a roundtable discussion. It fills my cup to get a chance to talk about some of these topics too. So the ones we all get passionate about.
Heck yeah.
All right. Well, from all of us, thank you so much for this Greater Culture Chat, all about resilience and walking into a gym and sticking with the gym. We look forward to seeing you on the next conversation.
Bye-bye.